and all that kind of stuff. And then the main crux will be about Jesus and your intersection with Jesus. And then I really do want to know kind of what your heart is behind Spearhead and why you're doing that and
Okay.
the whole thing. Right?
Sounds good.
Welcome to StoryPower TV. I'm so excited to be here with you today. You know, we always talk about one thing because StoryPower TV really is about one thing, and that is, what is your story of Jesus? Who is he to you? How does he impact your life? How does he intersect your life? And so today I have in studio with me a guest by the name of Mitzi. Mitzi and I have known each other, oddly enough, longer than I've known my wife. Yeah, it's been a long time. I think since like freshman year of high school. So this is going to be an interesting conversation to catch up and to talk about where have you been all this time and what has God been doing in your life. So Mitzi, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to drop in and visit us in the studio.
Well, thank you, Loren. It's definitely my pleasure. Yeah, it takes me back to Badger days.
It's been a minute, hasn't it?
It has been. It absolutely has been. So, yeah, we have a lot of catching up to do. And
so tell me about your journey. You went to TCU after high school, and what was that focus?
I went to Texas State, or Southwest Texas then.
Okay.
And I got a degree in education. I went back and got my master's degree in education, and then I went to TCU and got my MBA.
So education, was that just kind of a fun part of the journey, or was that the intention to be in teaching? I believe your mother was in education for many, many years, like mine was.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, it was not. Part of my journey in college, I actually intended to be I was accepted to pharmacy school, and so I was thinking that that's the route I was going to go, and God had different plans, and I really didn't want to listen for a while. My stubborn personality chose not to listen.
Like a Jonah experience.
Yeah, yeah. And my dad got really sick, and so I had to make a choice on what I was going to do. And, my mom, being my mom, said, you need to pick a degree and get out of school. And so education was actually the fastest degree to get. And she had been in education, so that's really why I chose that. And so it worked out well for a little while. I knew that that was only a season in my life. If you look at our website for spearheadbeyond.com, you'll see that there's kind of a long and winding journey that I've been on to get where I am today, and God is still working on me. But I did go ahead and continue my degree in education, but it was more in the special needs arena. And I started in gifted and talented, and God was like, this isn't the place for you. And so
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like that was?
I don't feel like I was challenged. I felt like it's interesting because I was the teacher that was way back before inclusion.
Right.
And but I had students who would drop by and spend some time, and man, my heart just went out to them, and I felt like that God was calling me to do something with them. I just wasn't quite sure. And so that seed was planted, but it took me many, many years to actually bring to fruition what I feel like God really wants me to be doing.
And so just my own impression has been that a lot of places where they have what they call a gifted and talented program, that these kids are really not much more than just above average, but their accolades and their awards seem overly lavish. Am I missing that? Would you say from an inside that I have a bad perspective of that?
Well, I would have to go back to the 90s to speak to it, but and I have been in school districts since then for sure, but I feel like that's an accurate observation. Yeah, I do. Our special education students, or students who are classified as special education, I feel like that there is so much more that we can offer them. And that's one reason I started Spearhead Beyond, because I feel like we can do that.
When you say you can offer them more, but do you mean more in the way of education, more in the way of allowances, more in the way of permissions or privileges? What do you mean by more?
I feel we don't have enough qualified teachers teaching special ed. That's one thing.
Okay.
The second thing is I feel like the resources are not allocated where maybe they would be most helpful. And I know in public education the resources are limited.
Right.
So
they're spread very thin and asked to
yes.
do a lot of things that make no sense, in my opinion.
Right. And but I guess the main thing that I was thinking of when I made that statement is that our students who are transitioning from high school into adulthood,
Right.
they need a lot of help. And, you know, when we're in first grade, we have a pivotal, or now sooner, but students learn to read, right? And that's a pivotal skill that they'll use throughout their lives. And I feel that the students who are finishing their senior year in high school often graduate and sit on the sofa. And that breaks my heart. That is absolutely one of the things that I feel God is calling me to do something about. And I have seen it happen over and over and over again. And I feel that our rural schools really do suffer because a lot of the larger school districts are able to offer an 18+ program. So the students can actually be in that until their 22nd birthday.
Wow.
And they get.
So is this like continuing education for high school, or is it more of an adult learning type of an environment?
Well, different school districts do it different ways. And one of the things we help facilitate is finding them employment opportunities and providing job coaches so that they can be successful in a real meaningful work environment. And that's where my love is. I have a heart for these students because that 18 to 22, we need to get some occupational prep classes in there,
Right.
Real life skills that, you know, may not have been taught, and hopefully they have been. And some school districts have fantastic special education programs, and they're teaching those prep courses, and they're doing a really good job. And they do get the students out in the workforce within their community, so it's kind of community-based learning, work-based learning. They get them out there and they're able to learn some skills while they're in high school, and then in the 18+ program, they're able to continue on and learn some additional skills. And a lot of the businesses where they actually hire them on.
Wow.
So they become, you know, meaningful, productive members of society, and they love what they're doing and they feel good about themselves. So
when we come back from the break, I want you to address that word. You put in air quotes, meaningful. But I have a feeling there's a lot more power to the meaning of the word meaningful, especially when we talk about gainful employment and job opportunity and career development, than maybe even than people would imagine
yes.
on their own. So we'll talk about that right after the break.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Okay, you can drop the live. Welcome back. I'm glad to be here with you on StoryPower TV. Our guest today is Mitzi, and we're talking about Spearhead Beyond and talking about what it means to have meaningful work. And I'm really curious because when you said it the first time, you kind of used it in air quotes, but I'm curious just how deep the meaning of meaningful work is to you, because it doesn't sound like a surface definition.
Absolutely not. Meaningful is kind of a catch-all phrase, I think.
Okay.
And you see an individual living with a disability, and they have so many skills and strengths and abilities to offer in the right position. And I feel that it is our calling to identify what those strengths, abilities, skills, and their weaknesses are, because we certainly don't want to place them in an environment where they're not going to be successful, right? And then we also need to provide that job coach so that they can be with them initially, form those long-term supports, and help them have everything they need in place so that they can succeed. And meaningful also is that the individual feels really good about him or herself, because it gives them an opportunity to be a part of the community, gives them an opportunity to earn a meaningful wage, and it gives them an opportunity to showcase their skills. So if their highest skill, the skill that in which they feel most successful is interacting with others, what environment do we want to find for them where they can interact with others? We obviously don't want to put them in the back of a restaurant washing dishes, right? Because that's not going to be something that's going to be meaningful to them. And
that's going to frustrate them to no end, and they're never going to feel like they've successfully accomplished. And at some point, the paycheck doesn't matter, right?
Absolutely not.
I study a lot of leadership personality profiles, things of that nature. Been certified with the John Maxwell team for almost 12 years now. But before that, I did the Dale Carnegie course.
Yes.
And one of the things that Dale Carnegie points out, kind of a contrast, is he said, if you give a man a fine reputation to live up to, he will.
Certainly.
But he also said, if you take a squirrel to fish training, he's a perpetual failure.
Exactly.
And there will never be a fish that learns to climb a tree. There will never be a fish that learns to harvest nuts. There will never be a fish that learns to fly. Even if you're just talking about falling with style, as Buzz Lightyear would say, it's not in their makeup. And no matter how hard you train them, no matter how much you incentivize them or try to pay them, no matter how much you push them or press them, it's not them. They're not going to do it. And it sounds to me like that's kind of the angle that you're approaching, is to say, in all the places where there might be this glaring, highlighted, overly pointed out inability, there's a whole lot of other abilities that have been ignored or suppressed intentionally.
Absolutely. And so many times these students, and it kind of goes back to the education side, we don't focus on the strengths, and we have to focus on the strengths, and we have to love what is good, right?
Sir Lawrence said, if you look at education today and you look at the Industrial Revolution, there's a reason that we progress them from grade to grade, that we line them up in rows, that they eat at a certain time and they go from class to class at a certain time. And it's because that best suited the Industrial Revolution. But if you look at kids that are homeschooled, or you look at kids from the prairie days, when they got up and did a hard day's work before the sun came up, and then they focused on education, what they chose to do with their life may or may not be related to what the family did, but their education was applicable to daily living, as opposed to, for lack of a better term, an indoctrination that causes you to fit within the mold of necessary society.
Right. And most of the individuals that we work with don't fit into that mold. That is not the best path for them.
And we're not talking about a square peg in a round hole. We're talking about an asterisk.
Right.
I mean, there's a little barb sticking out in every direction like
Yes.
that. When we can't make that fit in there.
Right. Right. And so we've got to teach them how they learn, and we've got to provide them the skills and the opportunities to learn in the places that are going to help them continue to be successful throughout their life. Because, I mean, nobody wants to talk about it, but parents aren't going to be around forever, right?
Right.
And so we've got to get them someplace where they feel confident. And the interesting thing is individuals with disabilities are, and research supports this, are the most loyal employees that anyone can ever have. Whenever,
Really?
Yes. And
Why is that?
they don't like change. They love certainty. They love routine.
As opposed to the Uber driver who's like, I'll do this because I need the cash this week, and next week I don't care if I go to work or not.
Right. So Spearhead Beyond, it is our responsibility to put them in a place, in a job site, in a work site where they do love it. And that is something that fits their skills, their abilities, their strengths. Because if they love it, they will stay as long as the employer needs them to stay. And they are also, research supports that they are on time and at the job much more frequently.
And more ready to work.
Absolutely.
Now, you used another phrase there. You said, teach them the way they learn. And I have to be honest and say my brain heard that in two ways, and I want to know, A, which one you mean, and if B, both of them apply. Teach them the way that they learn. I think there are a lot of young people who have been like the fish at squirrel school, and they've been told all their life, you're a failure, you're stupid, you're dyslexic, you can't read, you have bipolar disorder, you have ADHD. Yes, and so they've been told, you can't learn. We have a son who's dyslexic. He was homeschooled his whole life, never went to public school. And so what would have been the ostracization of being in a public school and being dyslexic, he would have been labeled with so many different things.
Right.
And he didn't like to read. We had to really twist his arm to get him to read what he had to read. He still doesn't like handwriting. But there were a lot of the books that I've read that we were able to get our hands on and audio. And he has a near didactic memory when he hears it or sees it. And he has a phenomenal mind for spatial relationships. Right. I mean, you could throw 10 things on the ground and he'll figure out how to put them in a baby food jar.
Yes.
And so the way he learns isn't just teaching him specific to the way that he's able to consume the knowledge, but it's revealing to him the way that he learns.
Absolutely.
And so teaching him, you're going to learn differently than the people around you. That doesn't make you wrong or bad or weird or broken. It just means that when you have the chance to get that book in audio as well as in print, scan along with the words as you're listening to them. It will change the way that you read as well. But now he's into some of the same leadership stuff. He joined a group. It's an MLM, not my bailiwick, but he's having fun with it. And they said, well, you have to read these 16 books before you can go to the next level. And he came over and was like, Dad, I need to borrow some money so I can buy these 16 books. And I said, give me the list. And so he starts reading them off to me, and I'm like, we already have it, we already have it, we already have it. I think out of 16, there were 2 we didn't have.
Right.
And he's like, why do you have all those? I said, because that's what I study all day long. He said, I don't even like to read. I've never even looked at the shelf. This is about half of what I have.
Right. And you have a pretty impressive library.
And so when he realized that's the stuff that I've been studying, he's like, okay, I need to dig into this. And he's read 6 books in the last 7 months.
Right.
I mean, but it's teaching them the way they learn. So did I hear that the way you said it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And in our world, we call it accommodations or modifications. But discovering, by the way, great parenting, discovering the way that they learn.
Right.
And not just writing it off and saying, they can't do this. Because they absolutely can. It's just a matter of figuring out the best way for them to learn.
And I think the key for that in our society today is that what's required for the instructor, the leader, the coach, the escort, whatever you want to call them, is love.
Yes.
I mean, you've got to care enough about the other person. There's a scripture verse that says, no greater love has a man than this, that he would lay down his life for a friend.
Right.
Well, I was a soldier in the Air Force. I understand what that means. I'm a firefighter. I know what it means from that capacity. But there are so many people that forget when your kid is begging to sit in your lap and you don't have time for that, you violated that principle.
Yes.
When you don't have time to go to dinner, when you don't have time to visit with a stranger, when you don't have time to stand in the parking lot and hold the door open until the old lady with the cane gets through. Right. Because that is the same lay down your life for a friend or even a stranger that demonstrates love.
Yes.
That sounds like that's kind of a driving passion behind your organization.
It really is. And I have to be the first to admit that I am challenged by that daily, because my schedule gets so full that I don't always have time, but it means I'm not making time.
Right. And that's about priorities, right?
Right. Absolutely.
What's important?
All about the priorities and all about remembering what God's asked us to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was the aha moment for you that out of all the things that you can do in life, if I remember right, you have a real estate license too, right?
I do. I do.
So what made you look at this and go, that's what I need to do? Did you start the organization or step into the organization?
Nope. I started it from scratch, and
Okay.
I prayed a lot before I did it. And I started it in 2019, right before COVID hit.
Wow.
Did all the
Hard
formation.
to start up a business to begin with. And
exactly.
that is the worst climate.
And I was like, I never ever panicked. I never had a moment where I felt like this wasn't the right path. I had prayed so hard, and I had always wanted to do something to help this population. And I thought, you know what? I think I can make money doing that.
What's your affiliation with the population?
I don't have one other than
No friend, no relative, nobody
No.
that just made an impression on you?
No. And most people ask me that. And my mom had a cousin who was quite a bit older, and he had Down syndrome, but I was never around him to speak of, except at like maybe a distant family reunion every once in a while, but nothing.
So that sounds to me like a supernatural burden or calling.
Yes.
Like God just said, I need you to do that. I need somebody to do this, and I think it's you.
And I took a huge leap of faith because I was like, I really didn't know exactly how I was going to finance it. I really didn't know exactly if I were going to have any customers. I didn't know. I just didn't know. There were so many unknowns. And so during this time of COVID, I began writing curriculum that was approved by the Texas Workforce Commission, and we use that now in the schools the school districts that we work with to teach these occupational prep courses, and we go out and we find them the work experience placements. We provide the job coaches, like I've already said, and I am in awe of the way God has worked. It was such a leap of faith. And we have grown. Our first year was beyond anything I ever imagined. And I thought, if I can just make enough for me, mm-hmm. I'll be fine, because I'll be doing something I love, and I'll be doing something that helps others. And man, he grew the company exponentially. And the last year was our first full year. In April of 21, we received our first referral, and the rest has just been history.
So which is because it sounds like you've got at least a three-legged stool there. You've got the TWC, you've got the employer, you've got the student, but there's like a fourth leg of coaches, because each of those are people with lives, with experiences, with expectations, with demands, with, this is what I want to get out of this. This is what I'm willing to put into this. Which of those four legs of the stool is the hardest to navigate and negotiate?
Goodness, it is a constant juggling act. I will say that. We do have staff members who are employment specialists, job coaches, who are teachers in the school district for part of the day, although they're employees with us. So like you say, there are a lot of legs of the stool. Right. And I think, without a doubt, the most difficult to manage is the staffing side. Just simply because in the summers we'll have 100 job coaches. And to fill all of those positions...
You'll have need for 100 job coaches.
Yes.
Wow.
Now,
and that's all the graduating students coming right out of the school ready for the workforce. So that's a new
yes.
pool every year.
Yes.
Okay?
And it's just hard to find qualified, dedicated individuals. But that's not the most difficult side. The most difficult side is to find the people with the soft skills who have the love for our students and the dedication to really want to jump in there and say, you know what, I'm going to do absolutely what's right for this student and get them prepared.
And how many of those do you have to hire every summer?
Typically, last summer was our nope, our second summer, I'm sorry. Last summer was our second summer. This will be our third. We had a lot come back last year, and then we already have people reaching back out saying, hey, I want to do this again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so retention is really good. We have a lot of teachers who like to do it in the summer to make some extra money.
Right.
And then we, word of mouth. We do very little advertising. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, we haven't heard of you, and we don't see you at our conferences. And I said, that's because we are at capacity. Yes, exactly. We're at capacity. But I feel God tugging on my heart, and I know He's going to grow this business, and He's going to bring us the right people. And that is one of my daily prayers.
So are you set up to franchise from where you are? Is this something that could easily be modeled and duplicated in other places?
It is so people focused. I think it would be difficult to franchise, but it's not something that hasn't crossed my mind. But we have a long way before we actually perfect what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And
you got to be able to model it before you can mimic it.
Right. And yeah, we just have so many great things, and building relationships day after day after day. And that word of mouth is just huge.
So what's the greatest thing in the last year that God has shown you through the work that He's called you to do?
Every day is joyful. It is absolutely a joy to watch these individuals grow, and for us to find them the right placement,
right,
and to see them flourish. I get sometimes a little bit sidetracked, and I get tied down with administrative things. In the days where I get out and I go see these individuals in their job site, it is the most rewarding aspect of the job.
What do you call them?
What do I call the students or the individuals? Mm-hmm. Because we work with 14 all the way to 70. I've had customers come to me 80. I like to call them clients, just because, or friends, because that they truly do become a part of the Speerhead Beyond family. When TWC refers somebody over to us, they call them customers, and that's a tough term for me. But I try to stay with the same vernacular so that it doesn't confuse everyone.
So I would see the customer as the business receiving them, not the individual going, but I guess it's...
Absolutely. It's kind of confusing.
How hard is it to find the businesses that want to employ these people?
A lot of it's education. They don't understand. They see that it might be a liability or it might be a hindrance. And, everybody's short-staffed, right? So,
right. And they're really short-staffed for somebody who's loyal and shows up to work.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really hard-pressed for that. I've been to Taco Bell and ordered my own. And then turned around, can I just get a cup? And they're like, what? I have to give you a cup? I'm like, well, it's not going to jump off the shelf. Just a cup.
Oh, right. Right, those soft skills. We're still working on them. Yes, absolutely.
Sometimes those soft skills are just squishy.
Yeah.
So I'm curious that how that vernacular plays out, because it seems to me like that, we talk a lot about identity. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy when you get labeled in society that you have this disease or you have this disability or inability, or you fall into this category of MHMR, or you fall into this category of the short bus, or however derogatory term you want to put that.
Right.
And so one of my favorite characters to follow is a guy by the name of Dr. Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you know much about him.
I do. I don't know a whole lot, but I know of him, and I've seen
one of his books is called Maps of Meaning. And one of the primary forces he talks about in that is the number of people who will be devastated psychologically and emotionally and don't even know it yet when UBI passes. When universal basic income becomes a natural part of our evolution of society, mm-hmm. He said the number of people who will leave their purpose to live because they don't understand that exchanging your effort, whether it's intellectually or physically, exchanging your effort for your means of living is naturally wired in us. And when we take that away from people, we rob them of purposefulness, meaning.
Yes. Absolutely.
I thought that was
I
interesting. to use that
wholeheartedly
word, maybe.
agree. You know, I was in Mineral Wells High School. Oh gosh, it was, I don't know. I believe it was Tuesday of this past week. And
Been sleeping since
I
then.
know, right? Every day, all the days just run together. But the principal stopped by and he said, I come here when I need to find joy. And I was like, I so agree. I so agree. And there was one student who was, this is an 18 plus program. One of the students jumped up and he said, this is the lady who's going to get me a job. You know, and I was just like, oh man, that just warms my heart because that's how he knew me. And I don't care if he ever knows my name, as long as he knows that I'm there to help him and that I am going to find him his job. And, you know, to some people, their job defines them, right? Sadly, but it does. And
I think even if the job doesn't define you or give you identity, it gives you purpose.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people who are like, my life sucks, my job sucks. I'm like, well, then quit your job. I'm like, well, I can't do that.
But you can.
Why would you want it if it sucks? Well, because I have to have the money. So what you're telling me is you're really only working for the money.
Right.
If you could make the same amount of money doing something you love, would you do it? And they're like, in a heartbeat, but I can't find what I love. Is that because you don't know what you love, or is that because nobody's giving you the opportunity? And now we go back to that full circle again. Did we teach them the way they learn?
Absolutely.
Did we accommodate our teaching to the way that they're going to receive it, or did we instruct them to learn how they actually learn?
Right.
And my first book is called Live a More Excellent Life, and the first 2 chapters are about vision. And I remember my mother scrubbing the urinals in our middle school. I remember that. She's down on her knees scrubbing the urinal.
In my hometown?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
And I walked in and I said, let's go to dinner, Mom. And she said, well, I have to finish this one and the one in the wing, in the west wing before I can go. And I said, why are you doing this? She said, well, this is my job. I said, I know it's your job, but why are you doing this? And she said, you know, I dropped out of high school, son. This is the best job I'll ever have. I said, no, Mom, that's a lie that you've been telling yourself and you've chosen to believe it. I was in the Air Force at the time. My sister was valedictorian from high school, top 5 in her class at Baylor University. There was no excuse for that. Well, she went back to school, adult education program, and Mr. Barton said,
God love him.
I think your abilities are so high, I won't accept you getting a GED. She said, well, what do you mean? He said, I want you to get a high school diploma. And while you're doing that, I'm going to talk to the superintendent and see if we can bridge your janitor days towards your teacher's retirement if you'll get your degree in education and come back here as a teacher. She retired from Lampasas High School Challenger school system.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's amazing.
So she spent her entire educational career with these kids who said, I've been kicked out of school, I've been dropped out, I've had drug problems, I've had discipline problems, I've had truancy problems, I'm giving up on life. And she's like, no, you're not. Not on my watch. And she helped them rewrite the story of their life to find a vision for moving forward. And so the first 2 chapters of my first book are about that. And I talk about one of the girls in that class that showed up at Lampasas High School. Parents were on drugs. She was having a hard time. She gets pregnant. They threw her out of school. She comes back 2 years later. She's 17. She said, I want to graduate. And they're like, we've already written you off. You're done. And for whatever reason, my mom was in the office while they're having this debate with her. And the girl goes, I am 17 by law. You have to educate me until I'm 18.
Right.
It's called compulsory attendance.
Yes.
And they're like, but you have a baby. And I believe it was her mom was dead and her dad was in jail still. And she was on her own. My mom raised her hand. She said, I got that big old building. We got plenty of room for a bassinet. Bring the baby to school.
God love your mom.
Graduate her. She's now director of nursing in Georgetown.
Oh, maybe we did need Kleenexes. I thought we were going to get through this without Kleenexes.
I think what you're doing is more than a job connection. You know, we have a mutual friend named Sherry Garcia. Do you know Sherry?
That name sounds... Wait, does she help ex-offenders?
Yes.
I do know her.
Yeah.
I do
She's
know.
a sweetheart.
What a calling.
And you know, it was her journey. And so she's like, what now?
Right.
And, you know, she has completely transformed her life. We actually did an event for her for New Year's Eve a couple of years ago. And the number of people that she engages with, and a couple of people have gone through the StoryPower Masterclass because they're having the same struggle. You know, they're coming out, they're reinventing their life, and they're like, I don't even know who I am. I mean, my whole life looks like this.
Yes.
I don't know how to move forward. One of the guys, and I haven't had him in that chair yet, but I will soon, is actually the chaplain for Babes, Gene McGuire. And Gene McGuire spent a lot of time in the penitentiary.
Right.
Later to find out that it wasn't justified, that he should have never been there. But I mean, 3 decades plus of his life. And he said,
wow.
God made me a different man while I was there.
Was
and he's
purpose.
touched a lot of lives. And so when Dr. Peterson says purpose,
yes,
and meaningfulness, they are so intricately tied together.
Yes.
And yet so many people abandon that to get the degree because it means a lot of income, to get the program that means a great job. They feel like they're driven strictly by the income. And you're thinking, but you know, would you not have scrubbed the urinals to become a teacher, to retire with that kind of legacy? Would you not have spent the time behind bars if that's what it took to build the legacy that he has now? I mean, he walks into any Babe's restaurant in the country and they're like, Gene's here.
Yes.
And you're like, that's what I want. I want to walk in the room and have people go, that's the lady that's going to get me a job.
Exactly.
Because that's the legacy. It's not the paycheck. It's not the deposits in the bank. It's not the size of the real estate portfolio.
It is not.
So how long do you think you'll keep doing what you're doing?
Forever. I mean, I really have thought about it. And most people my age are thinking about, well, retiring. And I know in my heart, unless God has other plans, that I probably will never retire. I mean,
I'll probably drop dead at work, whatever that work is at the time.
Yes, exactly. I have this very strong type A personality and this workaholic personality, which is not a good thing. But as my mom always says, if you get it going in the right direction, it's pretty good.
Momentum.
Yes, exactly.
Charge forward.
Yeah.
Very good.
So, I feel like God still has a lot in store, and He still has a lot He wants me to do.
So how can people help you and what you're doing, your cause, your mission, your God-given assignment? How can people get engaged in that and help you best?
Oh, wow. That's a wonderful question. I would say businesses. If we can get more businesses on board, we can get these individuals placed more quickly and get them in a position that they really want to be in. So I think the biggest thing that we need right now is more businesses on board, more businesses who are willing to listen and consider what we are doing to see if it's a good fit for them. And we certainly understand it's not for all businesses.
Right.
And then to find staffing, the best people for the right job.
Very good.
Yeah.
I appreciate you stopping by today.
Oh, Loren, thank you
just
so
having
much.
a conversation with us.
It's great to reconnect, and I just appreciate your having me so much.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank all of you for watching StoryPower TV. Again, share this. And I know some of you are in the Orlando market, some of you are in Miami, some of you are scattered all over the world. And you're asking yourself, how could I get involved in that? Well, pray. Pray that God would give you the insight. Maybe pray to make a contribution to help some of these kids who are going, I could do this, but I don't have job clothes. I don't know what I can do next. I don't have the education. Pray for a coach that maybe somebody's saying, I'd love to be a coach for that, but I can't take the time off my job. Maybe they need the financial ability to take the time off the job, or maybe they need their boss to wake up and say, let me pay you while you do that. Whatever that is, God knows that better than we do. God knows what we need before we know how to ask. And so pray for that. And if you're in the Texas area, if you're in the North Central Texas area and you have a business and you're thinking, I've got a couple of gaps that I could fill with someone who's loyal and shows up on time, then check it out. It's spearheadbeyond.org or .com?
.com.
Spearheadbeyond.com. Check out the website, drop an email and let them know, hey, I'd like to get involved any way that I can. And I know that they would love to have your involvement and give you a chance to see what purpose and meaningful opportunity really looks like in our world. I'm Loren Norris with StoryPower TV. Have a blessed day. All good?
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I didn't mean to pitch the business so much.
No, that was kind of my intent. You know, we want to talk about Jesus, but we also want to talk about what he's doing in the world. And for so many people, there's this massive